Williams. Messages are on the desk. And there's some hot coffee here. Can I bring you some?
No, thanks.
Or want anything at all?
Yeah. A sharp razor and a chart of the human anatomy showing where all the arteries are.
Hello and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host Fred.
Hello.
How you doing this week, Fred?
I'm good. I just the other day paid a little visit to our beloved alma mater. It's kind of weird.
How's it doing?
It's doing fine. It's slowly swallowing up the city, building by building. Eventually, the entire island of Manhattan will just be like an NYU campus.
Does it feel anytime you go anywhere in the village? Because, it's a little different than going to your high school campus or something and hanging around.
I went to the Starbucks near NYU.
Right.
It felt just like home. I mean, I think it's specifically, we could get into really boring minutiae here, but suffice it to say I went back, and it was back to a simpler time.
Mm-hmm. How apropos.
What are we talking about this week?
This week we are discussing a Stop At Willoughby. This is a first season episode. It was the 30th of the production run. It aired originally on May 6th, 1960.
This is Gart Williams, age 38. A man protected by a suit of armor, all held together by one bolt. Just a moment ago, someone removed the bolt, and Mr. Williams' protection fell away from him and left him a naked target. He's been cannonaded this afternoon by all the enemies of his life. His insecurity has shelled him. His sensitivity has straddled him with humiliation. His deep-rooted disquiet about his own worth has zeroed in on him, landed on target, and blown him apart. Mr. Gart Williams, ad agency exec, who in just a moment will move into the Twilight Zone in a desperate search for survival.
Cool. Got to take some Prozac, then we can get going with this. That's a little close to home. Very strange that he's 38, though.
I know.
Very strange.
What's wrong with him?
Unsatisfying. He's long overdue. Maybe it's built up, and that leads to the somewhat dramatic conclusion, which I'm sure we'll get to.
Maybe the networks were, exerting their influence.
Yeah. It is a strange thing. I don't get why. Why is 38 the age for? I feel like it's the age that all the Twilight Zone things happen to men in the Twilight Zone.
You mean 36?
Yeah, 36. Sorry. And it seems like at that time that would have been much older. Like that,
Yeah, I think that was primo midlife crisis time back then.
Yeah, now it's it's time 50. You moved out of the basement. So.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we like to do our own Serling-style intros. I probably should go first.
Oh, I doubt that, but give it a shot.
Martin Sloan, age 36. Occupation, Vice President, Ad Agency in charge of media. This is not just a Sunday drive for Martin Sloan. He perhaps doesn't know it at the time, but it's an exodus. Somewhere up the road, he's looking for sanity. And somewhere up the road, he'll find something else. In the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, you left me hanging just like Serling did way back when.
Yeah, a little high concept joke for the walking distance fans out there.
All right.
And also nicely lazy for my benefit.
Well, if you think that's lazy,
all right,
just wait, sir. Willoughby, Willoughby. Willoughby, Willoughby, Willoughby. Willoughby, Willoughby. Willoughby, 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 Willoughby. Willoughby, Willoughby. Willoughby, 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 Willoughby. Willoughby, Willoughby, Willoughby. Is it not coming through clearly?
Are you going to get to the Twilight Zone? Or?
I said the Twilight Zone twice there. Willoughby, Willoughby, Willoughby.
Okay. Well, it's been a tough week for you. I guess for both of us. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. This is a first season episode of the Twilight Zone. You can watch it.
It's been a while since we've tried to record 2 in a week, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of shows. Hopefully we'll pick up in the next segment, which is discussing the plot. But before we get there, spoiler alert. Check out this episode on Netflix or Hulu before we get going, because we are about to spoil it. So we open up on a sort of Mad Men-esque boardroom meeting where everyone is competitive smoking pretty intensely. Kind of like a cigarette off.
Yeah.
Did you feel like it was like weirdly a very small boardroom meeting table?
Oh, well, maybe that's part of the head games.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's like some sort of weird, like, you know, you're always supposed to sit with your back to the door or whatever. I don't know.
Or maybe it's like what's the game with the musical chairs? Like the desk is only big enough for so many people.
Yeah.
If you don't get a seat, you're fired.
Exactly. And how appropriate, because our hero, or our protagonist anyway, Gart Williams, is sitting at the edge of the table, sort of looking a little bit like he doesn't belong. What is the name Gart? Is that short for Garth?
Could it be short for Garth? Is Garth just too
long, yeah.
Too cumbersome?
Yeah.
You know, I'm Garth, but Gart to my friends, man.
Gartholomew.
Don't trouble
maybe?
yourself with that TH sound.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna look it up. Let's. We're talking about this enough. Hold on. Fill airspace. Go. Just say Willoughby a lot.
I'm just trying to figure out where I'm gonna lay in my sweet party on Gart joke.
Okay, got it. Well, there's a website called Baby Namespedia.
Right.
And the baby boy named Gart is pronounced as Gart. Gart's origin is Old Norse. Gart is a form of the English and Scandinavian name Garth. So there you go.
Okay.
Gart is seldom used as a baby name for boys. It is not even in the top 1,000 names. Maybe that was like a subtle comment about what a loser he is.
Maybe so.
And indeed he is a loser, because he's waiting in this meeting for his protege to show up. There's a knock on the door, and some bad news is delivered. Apparently the protege is not out to lunch at Sardi's East. He's resigned, and he's not only moved on to a new company, he's taken the big account with him. And that's obviously a bummer, and Williams' boss, or Gart's boss rather, gives him a speech about how
Not only has your pet project backfired, but it's sprouted wings and left the premises. I'll tell you what's left to us, in my view. A deep and abiding concern about your judgment in men. This is a push business, Williams. A push business. Push and drive. But personally, you don't delegate responsibilities to little boys. You should know it better than anyone else. A push business, Williams. It's push all the way, all the time. It's push all the way, all the time, right on down the line. Fat boy, why don't you shut your mouth?
it's like a transcript of our meetings about the podcast, pretty much.
Yeah.
Twilight Zone podcasting.
It's like the post-mortem of every episode. Fred, we gotta get more DLs. It's push.
It's a push business. That scene also nicely ends with like a classic, like, you know, pan into the actor's mouth as he's saying the line. We get like real good look at Gart's boss's dental work in that scene.
And yet the lines made me really wish that we had the, what's his name, Larry Blyden, the Rance McGrew actor, read them, because he would have
knocked that out of the
chewed
park.
those up.
Yeah.
But it would have been a fun read. It'd be like,
Yeah.
push.
This is like maybe nitpicking and stupid, but did you feel like it was a little bit weird that the boss is talking about like push when the mistake that Gart made was like more subtle than that? You know, it's like, I get that like push is like a good hook line for your episode about, but like, shouldn't it be more like, don't delegate? Like, he didn't really, like, fail to push. He just made a...
Yes, I agree. Perhaps the boss is thinking he wasn't pushing himself. He tried to let someone else do the pushing, but you've got to be the pusher.
Got it.
Or possibly it's like, maybe push was like the business buzzword of the era, like synergy, you know, or something from a couple of years ago. Yeah. So maybe he was just throwing the jargon at him because he didn't really know what he was talking about.
Yeah. Jargon has come a long way. In that era, it was just like simple machines.
Push, lift,
haul this business. Yeah. Now I think it's no longer synergy. It's probably like scalability.
Yeah. Synergy is old.
Yeah, social media, etc. Anyway, Williams at the very end of the meeting tells his boss to shut it and dashes out for a little pity party in his own office. Including that clip that we heard at the beginning, the bit about a very Serling suicide threat. He was like, if you could provide me with a detailed map of the body's arteries and a razor freshly sharpened, that would be just fine. Like, it just takes like 5 minutes to get it out. But it's pretty dark. I thought it was interesting how dark it was.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting foreshadowing in retrospect.
Yeah,
but,
good point.
I just thought the boardroom scene had a very Playhouse 90 vibe to it. Like, I know we're in a Twilight Zone episode and it'll become more Twilight Zone-y, but somehow the boardroom just felt very real.
You know, I half agree with you, and I think that part of the reason why it feels more real is that it's like a real business as opposed to like Company Inc., you know? And he's like,
but it is still ad company with the big account.
No, but he says auto account. He says auto account. So you get some indication.
There's detail.
Yeah.
It's never like the middling account.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. This is a sort of a push business. Right. This is a lean business. Right. I sort of agree with you, but I think the boss was a little bit of a cartoon character. He's a little bit of a caricature.
Once he gets going.
Yeah. But I do know what you mean, though. It sets up the character in a way that's a little bit more...
If it had never gone into a surreal place, I could have seen that, too.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
If it had just been all about his mental breakdown, but played without any fantasy element, I could see it.
But the Twilight Zone stuff gets going pretty soon, because in the next scene, Williams is on the train... going home, and it's snowing. So Gart falls asleep, and he wakes up, and he seems to have woken up in the past. The train is suddenly old-fashioned, and he looks out the window, and he seems to have slipped into some sort of weird, like, Mark Twain dreamscape.
I was going to say, it seems like the train stopped over in Portland or something. But
yeah. Well, there are a lot of signifiers that are old-timey Americana, which in today's age just read like hipsterism. There's
there's the guy riding the ridiculously big bicycle wheel thing, which I can't imagine ever was a thing that, normal people did. I feel like they were kind of the a-holes even then. It was basically just a recumbent bike, but then.
the triers too hard of the day. But they really do take it around the bases. It's like the frame is just chock full of like, there's that dude, there's like two kids with fish poles.
Barefoot kids,
There's an old Phaeton, there's like Abe Lincoln painting a white fence. It's just like so over the top. Apparently this weird landscape, this weird town is called Willoughby.
Where's Willoughby?
That's Willoughby right outside.
Oh, wait a minute. What's going on? There's no stop on this line called Willoughby. And look at it outside. The sun is out. It's summer.
That's what she is. Mid-July. A real warm one, too.
Wait a minute. It's November. What's going on here anyway? It's November. Where is this place? Where is Willoughby?
Willoughby, sir? That's Willoughby right outside. Willoughby. July. Summer. It's 1888. Really a lovely little village. You ought to try it sometime.
Willoughby?
Peaceful. Restful. Where a man can slow down to a walk and live his life full measure.
In Willoughby.
Where?
It's 1880 Willoughby.
This is maybe as appropriate time as any. A listener named Nathan who does supercuts every now and again was nice enough to put one together for us, and we got a little audio supercut of Willoughby here for you. Which basically just plays like the clip you just heard anyway, but...
Willoughby, 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 Willoughby.
Willoughby. It's Willoughby.
Willoughby.
Willoughby. Willoughby.
Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby.
Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Oh, Willoughby. Willoughby.
Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby.
Willoughby.
Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby. Willoughby.
Willoughby.
Willoughby. Willoughby.
Willoughby.
Willoughby.
Willoughby. Willoughby.
Ah, God, I wish you hadn't played that, because now it's lost all meaning. I can't even say the word Willoughby
I was gonna say,
feeling insane.
I'm sorry, a couple of those were from later in the episode, so I hope I didn't spoil anything.
Right. Surprise, surprise, Willoughby will be a focus of this episode. But not just yet, because the train jars Gart, and it wakes him awake, and he's back in the depressing present, not in the town that shall go unnamed for now. He's at home next, pouring himself a nice scotch, number 1 of 19. Yeah. We meet his wife, and like most 50s marriages, it's based around post-war exuberance, resentment, and alcohol. And she's, has heard through the gossip mill that he told off his boss that he may have lost his job, but apparently he's been forgiven.
You're really doing it a disservice, because I think we get some, like a master class of Serling dialogue in this exchange here.
They were all very solicitous, all the boys at the meeting. That free-flowing compassion that is actually relief. I'm the victim, not them. They've mistaken an intake of breath for an outpouring of sympathy.
Would you spare me your little homilies now? Please, and just give me a simple and direct and honest answer. Did you wreck a career this afternoon? Did you throw away a job?
It appears not. Mr. L phoned before I left the office. He has found it in that great, oversized heart of his to forgive. The somewhat obese, gracious gentleman will allow me to continue in his employ because he's such a human-type fella, with the small, insignificant, parenthetic additional reason that if I were to go to a competitive agency, I might possibly take a lot of business with me.
I like how the wife, midway through that, is just like, could you just say it like a normal person?
Just one night without the Serling thesaurus next to it.
You begin to sympathize with her a little bit more. I don't know, what did you make of his whole pity party? Did you think, I mean, obviously you're supposed to empathize with him on some level. Did you sympathize with the wife at all?
No, she's a woman, Fred.
Understood. Just wanted a natural transition into that.
Sorry. No, I don't know. I mean, I knew she was supposed to be the protagonist.
He's supposed to be the protagonist.
Or I knew, he's supposed to be the protagonist. I didn't think either of them were, like, coming off as hugely likable, but I just kind of stayed in his corner since,
Yeah.
It's not like she was really giving me a ton to work with either.
I feel like it was a little bit vague. He's just like, I'm not cut out for competition. Mm-hmm. I feel like when people get to that point in their lives, that they have a midlife crisis and a job that they really didn't ask for, there's something maybe more specific that they always, they wanted to, I don't know, get out of the rat race and start a podcast or something. I don't know. He's just like, I'm not cut out for business. Like, do you have anything? Do you want to just sit around and drink scotch all day, or what? What is it?
I'm not very young, soon to be old, very uncompetitive, rather dull, quite uninspired, average type guy.
I want that on a t-shirt. Yeah. That's my motto.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to identify with a character who is just I'm just a guy. I'm an average type guy.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think
or is it just that's a good thing because it's I'm just your average American male, 18 to 25 who buys cigarettes and blah blah blah. It's like a demographic based character description.
I hit all 4 quadrants of the tent pole.
Yeah. He talks about Willoughby to his wife about his dream. He he makes this reference to how it looked like a Courier Knives print, which sent me down a little Wikipedia rabbit hole. But apparently, Courier Knives was a company or was a partnership between 2 people that made these very classic Americana prints that sort of look like what Willoughby looks like a horse and buggy going through an old town.
What's that guy now? The Thomas Kincaid kind of feel?
A bit. Yeah, totally. They were the Thomas Kincaid of the era.
Yeah. I think I've got a little bit of that part.
Willoughby. It was summer, very warm. Kids were barefooted. One of them had a fishing pole. It all looked like a Courier Knives painting. Bandstand, bicycles, wagons. I've never seen such serenity. It was the way people must have lived 100 years ago. Crazy dream.
Or specifically 1888, as you were told in the dream. It was weirdly vague.
Maybe they were a super behind the times 1888.
That's true. Yeah, it could be. It did seem a little bit retro, even given it. I do find it really interesting though, just how nostalgia is just such a moving target, and it's really, I mean, it's obvious, it's not a profound observation, but
sure.
So many people, and in American political rhetoric is based around going back to a more simple time,
of
and
course,
You know, a lot of times I think when people think of that, they think of the 50s, but, you know, here you have a character who's essentially molded in, you know, the types of the 50s, and they're looking back to even further back. I don't know. It's just interesting.
Yeah, so that kind of reminds me, there's a subreddit on the website Reddit called...
There's a subreddit on Facebook.
Right. Called Le Wrong Generation, which is just filled with collections of snippets, usually from Facebook or things like that, where people are complaining that they were born in the wrong generation and like, oh my God, music today is so terrible. Yeah. Whatever happened to bands like Tool or something like that? Where you're like, yeah, kinda, I guess.
Oh, the classic Tool era. It was a simpler time.
Yeah, like here's just an example. Someone posting, I'm only 11 years old. I wish I was born in ancient Greece because I hate Justin Bieber and Nicki Minaj. They are talentless. This is real music. Ancient Greek music, like The Lyre?
11-year-old boys did really well in ancient Greece. Sorry. God, I'm sorry.
That's impressive. And usually I'm the one who says the things that are terrible.
Yeah, I'll probably cut that.
Yeah.
Anyway, yep.
Yeah, keep moving.
So Gart's wife isn't really too interested in the whole Willoughby dream. Gart has a nice long chat with himself about it, or with his glass of scotch, and then we cut and he's back on the train. He falls asleep, and we see Willoughby again. This time, I feel like they've even more ramped up the Americana whimsy. There's like an old band playing on a gazebo. There's a kid
Susan B. Anthony's doing the Charleston.
Exactly. And Gart is about to get off this time, but the train starts moving and jolts him awake. Only this time, Gart's got a plan of getting off at where, John?
Willoughby.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, he wakes up and he's got like Freddy Krueger's hat in his hand, so now he knows how to get back there.
He's got like Freddy Krueger's old-timey boater hat in his hand or whatever. Freddy Krueger's fish pole. Next up, Gart's back at work getting the old push, push, push speech from Mr. Misro. I do think it is cool that he has this actual job that's like, you know, it's advertising, and it's something that Serling would have been familiar with because he worked with advertisers working in television. And it's interesting because if you compare it to like The Bard, where, you know, television is portrayed so ridiculously and advertisers are kind of like the enemy, I think it shows a lot of like empathy on Serling's part to like take the role of someone that he himself would be in contention with and portray them as a sympathetic character.
Yeah, but then again, if you compare pretty much anything to The Bard, it's going to look pretty good.
True. Good point. Let's move on. Did you catch this sort of cute reference to Ray Bradbury?
Which one was? Oh, yeah. What is it? It's like
he asked like a secretary about like, how's the Bradbury wink account going? How are those Fahrenheit?
Like, his lawyers are calling us nonstop.
Exactly. Yeah. Williams is very stressed out. He's juggling 2 telephone calls and a secretary. And he goes into his executive bathroom and loses it when Mr. Misro appears in the bathroom to tell him to push, push, push. Not literally.
You just want to steer clear of mirrors in the Twilight Zone.
Pretty much. There's always going to be somebody nagging you in those damn things.
Yeah, best case scenario, it's yourself or your conscience of some sort.
Yeah, but it's like...
It's never going to be good.
It's normally like your holier-than-thou do-gooder self, you know? It's never the self that's going to be like, hey... Go down and get yourself some ice cream. You've earned it, big guy. That self never appears in the mirror. Yet it is the one that I listen to more often than not. Anyway, he finally freaks out, smashes up a bathroom mirror, calls home, asking for help from his wife. And she doesn't want to hear it and hangs up on him. Gart's headed back home, and he falls asleep on the train again. And we're back in Willoughby, and this time he is resolved to get off. He does get off, and yeah, it sounded weird. Anyway, Gart is resolved to climax.
So is all about a guy trying to get off on a train.
Okay, all right. Moving on. He exits the train, and everyone in Willoughby sort of seems to know his name, and seems to be quite happy that he's entered their weird dystopian Mark Twain Prozac world. And we harsh cut back to the present day. Oh, actually, there's a kind of clever cut. There's like a cut that shows the clock pendulum swinging, and then the train conductor's lantern is sort of occupies the same space. And we're back in the present day, and apparently it seems Gart is lying dead in the snow, and the conductor explains what happened.
And what was that?
You didn't get the clip, did you, John?
Didn't.
Okay. All right.
I'm on the edge of my seat, though. This is very exciting. Did the conductor do it?
I'll do my best conductor voice for this.
Willoughby.
Well, it's funny. I wanted you to play the clip because it's a little bit ambiguous. The conductor says something like, he just shouted Willoughby and jumped off the train and died on impact. But I didn't quite get whether the implication was that Gart was awake and just going like, for Willoughby and country, and then just jumps off the train, or whether he sleepwalks off the train and just says Willoughby in his sleep. What?
Yeah, I guess that part is a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah, but I mean, unambiguously, he's dead as a doornail. And we get one final stinger. The funeral parlor that comes to pick him up, apparently before any kind of medical efforts to check on him. They just skip all that, call the funeral parlor, and the one that comes to pick him up is called Willoughby and Son Funeral Parlor, in a twist that adds a little stinger of irony, but doesn't really make much sense. Exactly.
Kind of reminds me of like when the cable man and What's in the Box kind of looks at the camera and winks at the end. It's like, what are you
winking at me for?
Yeah, what are you doing? What are you adding to me? But whatever.
Yeah,
it seems like it seems like a twist at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get Serling's outro.
Willoughby, maybe it's wishful thinking nestled in a hidden part of a man's mind, or maybe it's the last stop in the vast design of things, or perhaps for a man like Mr. Gart Williams who climbed on a world that went by too fast, it's a place around the bend where he could jump off. Willoughby. Whatever it is, it comes with sunlight and serenity and is a part of the Twilight Zone.
The Willoughby part of the Twilight Zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the capital, that's taken.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's a sleeper suburb. So, yeah, what is the implication there at the end? Is it that he knowingly and consciously committed suicide, or is it a little more vague and Twilight Zone-y than that?
I don't know. I think he made a decision, I don't want to be part of this world anymore.
Yeah.
I want to be in Willoughby. I'm not entirely clear, how coherent he was when he jumped off the train in doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I think he just as well could have, they could have found, a weird husk of a body and he was brain dead or something because his soul had escaped to Willoughby. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I should have thought about that.
Well, hey, whatever. It's only the 105th episode of the podcast or whatever. Yeah. Never too late. A lot of people talk about the moral of this episode, but it's not exactly clear to me what the moral is. In other episodes, I feel like the character makes a choice with a clear sense of what the consequences are, or at least some sense of responsibility, but it's not really clear to me that Gart is if I go to Willoughby, I'll die, or
But I don't think it's even played Serling's clothes doesn't make us seem like it's a bad thing, what happened.
But he dies,
like he's kind of... Right, but it seems like his soul has made an escape into Willoughby. So
it's a pretty dark message.
I think it's a weirdly dark episode, but I think it's partly dark because it plays it it's not so bad. He got away. He's some kind of happy now.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of episodes about a character escaping to a happier, simpler, alternative life. You've got the 16mm shrine. You've got the one about the actor who disappeared into his own movie.
Sure.
And I think oftentimes it's treated positively, but you don't actually have to see them slitting their wrist to get there. And I think that this one kind of shows you his dead body in a way that makes it a little bit murkier, I feel like.
It totally does. I think it's totally murkier. I think it's the odd thing is that I feel like Serling's intro still plays the same as at the end of 16mm Shrine or something. It doesn't seem like there's much critique of the terrible price he paid to get to Willoughby. It seems just kind of was it all a fable or a fantasy? Well, at least he's got some serenity here in Willoughby. I don't know.
Willoughby is in hell, by the way.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty hot down by the old pond, isn't it, today?
Yeah.
Very hot.
I don't know. It's we should begin the inevitable comparison to another episode, Walking Distance, which actually came earlier in the series and is very similar in concept. There's a stressed out ad executive who wants to return to like a simpler time.
Right, but he was 36.
True, totally different. Let's just end the conversation there. Clearly nothing in common. And in that one, he returns to his childhood home, and in this one, it's more of this like idealized Americana. And I think that, like, in a way, initially, I felt like, well, Walking Distance just makes so much more sense because you would pine for your childhood. You wouldn't pine for, like, Mark Twain's childhood or whatever. But in a way...
You might if you didn't like your own childhood.
True, that's true.
If you've, like, lived your whole life thinking there was something better that you missed out on.
But I also think, in a weird way, it kind of ties in with the fact that he's an ad executive, because it's kind of like an ad executive's, like, vision of, like, old-time America,
That's a good point. But it kind of begs the question, why didn't Marty Sloan do that in the first place? Just different taste.
Maybe he wasn't a good ad executive. I don't know.
I thought it was interesting that this episode kind of kept shuffling him back and forth to the fantasy world or the Willoughby, just because I feel like most Twilight Zone episodes, it's once you get there, you're kind of there and have a kooky adventure and then maybe get back, maybe don't. But I don't know. It made it a little bit more interesting just because you didn't know when he'd be shaken free or how he would be able to, like, get to stay there.
This story is like a very classic trope of especially like post-war literature. You have this character who's like a businessman who like live this sort of phony baloney world that's based on wealth and status, and they like live in sort of a cutthroat business life, and then at home their life is no more real or honest, and through some sort of social faux pas that kicks off a chain of events that like unravels their life. There's a famous book called Appointment in Samara by John O'Hara that's basically like that plot. A Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates is very similar to that. Like almost all of John Cheever's fiction sort of follows this. And even up into the present day, I feel like, well, relatively the present day, like movies like American Beauty are sort of based around this idea of like a stressed out businessman living a fake life in suburbia. And it's just an interesting, like, it's weird how that's like such a classic trope of...
Yeah. One of my favorite novels is basically this concept. It's called Coming Up for Air by George Orwell. It's one of his lesser knowns, but it's all about kind of just a lower middle class guy who wins the lottery and decides to spend it on taking a trip back to his childhood home because he wants to escape the rat race and escape gloom of World War II looming, hanging over everything. So it's really good.
Do you feel like there's something about that like basic idea that is really rooted in the fact that people writing these stories are like writers and filmmakers, and they just have no respect for like the business world on some level? You know what I mean? No, but I mean that sincerely, in the sense that like for like a lot of creative people, like the idea of getting stuck in like a fast track business career just seems like so horrifying. But I'm sure there's plenty of people who get real enjoyment out of it. I have
friends who are very satisfied, and I do find it confusing. But there's
I'm sure they're madly jealous of our 13,000 downloads we got this month.
Right. Yeah, I would say probably like satisfied businessmen probably aren't writing lots of novels. You've got to get like the self-help business books to see them, and they're all pretty happy with themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Totally true. I was recently, the Mad Men is in its like final season, and I actually don't watch the show, but I vaguely know what the deal is. And it's,
I don't really watch it either. This should be an interesting discussion.
Well, it is based around like, the early and mid 60s, and it's like set in an ad agency, and it's based around characters that are sort of like Gart Williams a little bit.
Right.
And the creator of it, Matthew Weiner, is a huge fan of the Twilight Zone. And he actually, or at the very beginning of the show, he had like all the main actors and people sit down and watch 10 movies or 10 things. And one of them was Patterns, Serling's,
cool.
Pre-Twilight Zone drama that is very much kind of like a similar milieu to this. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
For Mad Men fans, interesting little connection.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Scott, Zickery, Mark Grams Jr., Zickery and Grams, and IMDb.
This was supposedly Rod Serling's favorite first season Twilight Zone episode. The town square supposedly still looks today much as it did over 100 years ago, right down to the statue honoring local Civil War soldiers.
Wait, what do you mean? Like, the town square where they filmed it, or?
It's a funny detail. It's like, yeah, they made a statue honoring Civil War soldiers. I don't think they would, like, rip that down
yeah,
in
exactly.
the 70s. It's just like, it's time to put up some new tract housing.
Time to put up a statue honoring the founder of Tumblr.
Right. The original draft of the story was considered for the pilot episode of the series, but eventually rejected. It was later rewritten. And Willoughby, Ohio has a yearly community event involving trains in honor of a stop at Willoughby.
It's so crazy.
Known as Last Stop Willoughby. Sounds like kind of like a Sturgis, except for... What a funny episode to do a tribute to.
Well, I mean, I think...
Does everyone just ceremonially throw themselves from the train?
It's odd. It's like a ceremony based around people
Kids
who...
can just get browbeat by fat executives.
Yeah, exactly. Here's your cotton candy. Push, push, push. Yeah, it's odd. It's like a celebration devised by people who have never seen the episode. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's clearly like we happen to share a name. Let's go for it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's like having a block party call. Like if you live on Maple Street, being like, the monsters are due. Block party.
Right.
I think possibly the reason why is because Graham says that town in Ohio, Willoughby, is one that Serling would pass through when he was taking trains back and forth. And so, like, it's actually really like the Willoughby that Serling was thinking of when he wrote the episode. But even so, it's like, what the hell?
There's like dead ad executives littered all around the train depot.
Jesus, this episode is dark. From the Graham's book, apparently Serling actually for a while took the same train route that Gart Williams did. Like Westport was, I think, the last stop, and that's where he was living at the time, or something like that. So he was familiar with the route, which I was kind of interesting. Kind of makes me wonder if Rod had any dark thoughts coming in and out of town. And
apparently some of the places that were called out on the trip were actual stops along the line. Okay.
Also, interestingly, Buck Houghton wrote a letter to Serling, or at the time, or a letter to somebody, and he was praising the script. And he actually brought up the concept of like how the fact that Gart worked in an ad agency might be like just boring and confusing he refers to teenage viewers. So maybe the Twilight Zone was thinking like, okay, teenagers or like 20-year-olds don't really care about like the inner workings of this office. Let's just make it as generic as possible, which is certainly the strategy they took most of the time. So it's interesting just to hear that something that I think makes it better, they were worried would actually make it a little more ineffective. But anyway, interesting. Yeah. What about bios?
James Daly played Gart Williams. He also played Honorius in Planet of the Apes, which was written by Serling. That's a little Serling connection for you. Howard Smith played Mr. Mizrell. He was also in the episode Cavender is Coming. Jason Wingreen played the train conductor. He was also in the episodes The Bard and The Midnight
Sun.
Sun.
He's the Boba Fett guy, right?
I believe that's right.
Yeah.
Billy Booth played Short Boy. He was most well known as Tommy on Dennis the Menace.
That was a lot of... Billy Booth played Short Boy. He was known by Lil Tommy on The Rascal Show. All right, go on.
I did think I believe the taller of the boys looked kind of like Ron Howard, and for a second I thought it was, but it couldn't be because Ronnie was only like 5 at this time, judging by walking distance.
Yeah.
Bernard Sell was uncredited as an ad executive. He was also in the episodes in When the Sky Was Open and Printer's Devil. It was written by Serling, directed by Robert Parrish, who also directed A Mighty Casey and One for the Angels, which closes out the Parrish oeuvre.
Wasn't he also a basketball player, John?
Yeah, I got you. I slammed you real hard way back when.
Still hearing about that one.
Yeah, I don't.
Just wait till I get you with my Mesut Ozil jokes. That's a soccer player. Go on.
I don't know if I mentioned this in the past. He won an Academy Award for editing Body and Soul, which was directed by a friend of ours, Grandpa.
So, right.
Twilight Zone. Small world.
Yeah, good point.
And then this is just a quote from Parrish for fun. On visiting John Ford on his deathbed,
sounds fun.
We talked about zoom lenses. He didn't approve. John Wayne, he approved. Hank Fonda, he approved. Pat Kelly, he approved, but wished Kelly hadn't turned executive. Terrible thing for a good sound effects cutter to allow himself to become the president of a successful film producing company. He then said, "Have you won any more Oscars?" I told him I hadn't, and he said, "Turns out they're not as unimportant as I thought. You should go ahead and win as many as you can."
That's amazing. I wish that it was required, like, by law in some way to, like, just go to a person on their deathbed and just give them a list of things, whether they approve them or not.
Right. And unfortunately, we don't have a Mystery Science Theater connection this week.
Pity.
Yes.
What about IMDb ratings?
IMDb gives this episode an 8.8.
Very high.
Pretty darn high.
Among the top, like, probably 10-ish. Just anecdotally, this episode is, like, very beloved, like, on message boards and, you know, on Twitter and on Twilight Zone Facebook groups. People really, like, big up this episode. And I think it's because most Twilight Zone episodes in people's memory get reduced to just, like, one thing, almost like an Aesop fable type of thing. And it's basically just, like, I don't like my job. And so people are like, I don't like my job, so I love this episode. You know what I mean? It's a fine episode. I just don't think it's quite as good as Walking Distance, and I'm just inevitably thinking, I like it. I just don't think it's among my top episodes.
You knew the twist that was coming, right?
Wait, do you mean the Willoughby funeral parlor thing, or?
Well, no, the fact that he had to kill himself to get to Willoughby.
Yeah. I mean, I'd seen it a long time ago, yeah.
I'd never seen this episode before, but that detail had been spoiled for me, and so I was watching it knowing that, and I felt like there was kind of a weird mixture of wistfulness and ominous stuff to Willoughby the whole time, and I just wonder if I could have watched it totally clean. I think I wouldn't have seen the suicide or the jumping from the train at all, but knowing it, like when he talks about wanting to slit his wrist at the beginning, I can't help but think like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it fits well next to Walking Distance just because I think it's got a weirder, darker tone.
Yeah.
I think Walking Distance is a little bit more wide-eyed and sweet, and this one is kind of the, like, in a way, dark underbelly of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's like, I don't know. It's like an episode that seems to suggest there's some kind of moral about nostalgia and not indulging it or whatever, but...
Right.
But then, like, at the end, you're kind of like, well, was that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, I'm not left with a poignant sense. Like, Walking Distance to me is, like, pitch perfect. It's, like, exactly the right, you know, slap on the wrist for someone who overly indulges in nostalgia. They have, like, a limp that they got from falling off this carousel. It's just, like, perfect. You know, it's like, Willoughby, in this case, it's like, he imagines this world called Willoughby, which he doesn't really get a chance to explore. He wants to check it out. He checks it out. He dies. It's kind of like, I'm not left at the end of it thinking like, oh, that's exactly what nostalgia is like. Or, man, he should have gone back to his job and his horrible wife. I just more kind of think like, oh, that sucks. Or it's good. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's confusing in a way that I'm not sure is like intentionally ambiguous in sort of a interesting Twilight Zone-y way. It more is the kind of ambiguous you get when you're not quite sure what you're doing, I feel.
I guess if you just commit to what you think the ending is, it makes it a little easier to stomach. Like in my head, he's living on in this weird Willoughby kind of heaven, but he's just, you know, he's dead, but something's going on up there, and so he's happy enough.
So he got to heaven by committing suicide.
Well, no, he got to Willoughby.
Okay, good point.
So,
Touché.
I don't know. So all that being said, I think it's well directed, well acted.
Yeah, no, it's very well
I think
made.
it's a very good episode. I agree. It's not Walking Distance. I'd put it at like maybe somewhere between like an 8 and an 8+. Maybe 8+.
I think it's for me a 7+, or I don't know, 8-. I think you're right. It is very well made. It's definitely one of the better made episodes, just through and through, and the acting is great. The only character I didn't really like was the push guy. I felt like he was a little too much of a cartoon. He was like a weird, like, big jowled bulldog in an episode of, like, relatively real people, you know? Cool. All right, well, that wraps it up.
Another heated debate.
8- versus 8+.
Yes.
Thank you to the many people who requested that episode.
Which includes Aaron via email, Exceptional Remarks via Tumblr, and Michael via Twitter.
Thank you, guys. We're recording this episode out of order, so we don't know what's next, but stay tuned to our Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, etc. If you want to find out, and if you want to get in touch with us, you can use all of those mediums to do so. John, what are they?
You can email us at twilightpwn, pwn@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com, where we put up pictures and things we find related to the episodes we discuss. You could listen to us on Stitcher or TuneIn Radio or other podcast apps. And you could subscribe to us in iTunes. If you're there, if you'd leave us a review, we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks much. Just as a kind of plug for writers who are long dead. I mentioned them earlier in the episode, but that book, Appointment in Samara, Revolutionary Road, and also the John Cheever short stories are all super great and really take place within this sort of world that's sort of set up in this episode. And if this is like a sort of appealing thing to you, I really urge any listeners to check those out, especially John Cheever. He has a story called The Country Husband that's, I think, kind of in many ways similar to this, but, you know, it's played more realistically and more subtly. And
would you describe it as soft or hard sci-fi?
It's no Drill Maxian chronology, but...
well, then I don't want to read it. Yeah. Okay, talk to you later.
All right, bye.
I don't remember what this clip is. Let me just play it.
Teach yourself books and audio record.
Oh, that shouldn't be in there.
What the hell was that?
It's my teach yourself Esperanto thing.
Oh, God. Okay, well, I know we're going to play the Easter egg. Wait, why do you have that loaded up into your thing?
I just saved it in the wrong directory when I was chopping up the tape.
Let's hear some more of it. Just play it.
Well, see, I'd imported an audio tape into the computer, and then I was dicing it up. So this is just the introduction. It doesn't. I don't think it has any lesson material.
Teach yourself books and audio recordings are protected by copyright and are published in North America by.
It's not that interesting.
Well, it's more interesting than this podcast so far. All right, let's get back to it. So there's a knock on
pretty blatantly saying don't play me on a podcast. This is protected by copyright.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. That includes your stupid Twilight Zone podcast.
Exactly.
We'll come after you.